Hello, and welcome to episode 173 of Prog Review. And as you can see, the antibiotics are working. And if you're following any of this, we're talking about the Kinks are the Village Green Preservation Society. Yes. If you've not been following, I'm doing this thing about concept albums. It's a kind of a loose concept. Get it? Concept. And so we're looking at this one. Alright? Was that alright with you? Yeah. Good. I shall begin. Released on the 22nd of November 1968, this album was recorded over a 2-year period and could be described more as a thematic concept album than one with like a strict narrative. And you can almost cite it as almost being like a British version of what Zappa was doing with his Freak Out album, which was looking at American life. Now, it wasn't the first time that the Kinks had adopted a thematic concept framework, and you can hear that on their earlier Face to Face album, which was released in 1966. And that adopted the loose thematic concept of social observation. Woohoo! A bit like Zappa again. But this album, was an album that was born out of difficulty. It had a difficult birth, if you could use that particular metaphor when talking about the release of a collection of songs. And the original ideas began to take shape and revolve around the Village Green the previous year, back in 67. In fact, it went back further than that. The original seeds of germination were planted in 1966 with the release of A Sunny Afternoon. And Ray Davies and the band, to some extent, became frustrated with writing hits and were upset at being barred from touring America. And so Ray Davies wanted to embrace his Englishness and write a very personal album about this fair isle. And like I said, its roots stretch right back to 1966, where Village Green was actually recorded. It was either late 66 or early 67 during the Something Else by the Kinks sessions. That's how far it went back. Now, before we go on any further, I'm going to hand you over to my good friend Darren, who's going to show you this in detail. Take it away, Darren. Why, thank you, Darren. And here we have the Kinks are the Village Green Preservation Society Deluxe Edition. Oh, yes, indeed. And there you are. Disc 1, 2 and 3. Disc 1 has the stereo version of the album, Disc 2 has the mono version, and Disc 3 has loads and loads of extras. The only thing you need to do is get through the lime green CDs. Horrible colour. Why lime green? But you get little bands peeping from underneath. Look, there's Ray. Hello, Ray. Of course, the old joke is, how do you get a drink out of Ray Davies? You stick your fingers down his throat. Ha 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 ha. Who said comedy was dead? That was brought to you courtesy of YouTube Comedy Week, whatever that was. And it's a lovely package, and we've got a nice little booklet here to accompany a said album. We just have a little nosy. And it's got a nice little essay there telling you about the making of the album and the trials and tribulations of the Kinks at this time. It was a recording of much fraughtness. Is that even a word these days? But yeah, it gives a good background to the recording and its subsequent reinvention as a classic album because it was a flop at the time. So there you go. It's all rather good. It's a superlative version. This was 2004, released on Sanctuary Records, I believe. And there you go. So it even tells you how to recreate the original version of the album. It tells you on the liner notes, which is all rather clever. So let me just slide it in. Oh yeah, and hand you back to the fat idiot. Now I think you'll agree that was informative as ever. Now, for all of you out there who don't hail from this fair isle, one must explain the concept of the village green. Just the words village green to me these days conjure up images of a time gone by, a bygone age of English culture lost before the urban spread and the ganglions of motorways spread through fair Albion like the tendrils of an aggressive cancer. There was the hamlet and the humble village, and these small residential areas tended to be built around the village green, complete with church and steeple and cemetery and the duck pond and the reed bed. And in the summer the green would come alive and be the social focal point. Email. That was a different noise, wasn't it? Oh no, actually it wasn't email, that was Messenger. Scotty is trying to contact me, apparently on the old Facebook. Naughty old Scotty. I'm doing a video. How dare he? And in the summer, the green would come alive as it being a social focal point, and there'd be the sound of leather on willow as the cricket season would take place, and generally the area would be used for communal relaxation and recreation. And out there, the village green still exists, and instantly it does bring to life images of a conservative, small-minded thinking and attempt to hold back the tide of progress. Village life is for those who like to live their lives in other people's pockets, and not for the likes of those who prefer the anonymity of the city. Been there, done that, got the front page spread on the local paper. If you follow my story, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And indeed, Ray Davies sat down and wrote a collection of very English songs, but events conspired against him and slowed down his creative output. And as the deadline was reached, a version of the album was sent to his record label Pi, and they sent the masters off to Europe to be, pressed into those black shiny things with the lines on, and distributed over Europe. Now, the 12-track version of the album is called Village Green, and it is quite collectible now. But Ray Davies wasn't very happy with the finished product, and he approached Pi and said, "Hey, can we make it a double album?" And they said no, and there was lots of negotiation, and eventually they came to a compromise and had the album resequenced, and they added 3 extra songs and retitled it The Kinks Are the Village Green Preservation Society. So I told you it was a difficult birth. Now, for me, one of the interesting things about the album is actually the title itself. The band have renamed themselves in line with the thematic concept of the record, the same way the Beatles did with Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. They didn't need to do it. It could have just been called the Village Green Preservation Society, but with the addition of that little word R, it changes the meaning of the title. They've become a different band. They're not the Kinks anymore. They're something else. And I find that fascinating, and it shows that Ray Davies really wanted to create something different, away from that Kinks brand, and something very personal with this record. And so the album itself celebrates times gone by and is steeped in nostalgia. Utterly an English affair. And the really funny thing is that the album failed to chart when it was released, and it was having to fight out with such gems as Electric Ladyland and the White Album, and at the time it turned into a flop. But over time, the irony is it became the biggest seller in the Kinks' back catalogue, and for good reason too, because each song on it is brilliant, and each song has subsequently become a template for other bands to use. In fact, Davies himself refers to this album as the most successful flop of all time. Amazing. It's amazing how an album can turn around like that. Don't think any other album has done that. I mean, I don't know. Make suggestions in the box below. Now, okay, this isn't progressive rock. It's not progressive rock at all, but it is worth a listen if you want to know how to write succinct, memorable pop songs. And there's no crime in writing pop songs, okay? It's a lot harder to write a memorable 3-minute hit than to noodle on for 23 minutes. And, you know what I mean. You know what the universal hand gesture is. Yeah, I'm shaking some coffee beans. That's right. Standout tracks for me is the title track. Do You Remember Water, Picture Book, Big Sky, Animal Farm, Village Green, People Take Pictures of Each Other. Blimey, I might as well just reeled off the entire song list from the back here. But, you know, it's a strong record, you know. And while I am a fan of the Kinks, I've only ever owned the, I think it's called Picture Book compilation. And, email. That was email this time. And... you know, for me, this album's a recent discovery, you know. Yeah, I'll be honest, you know, I don't always, you know, I'm not always got my finger on the pulse. But this is why I like doing this series, because it gives me the chance to look at albums that I might have missed. And this has become quite a favourite of mine now. Of course, excuse me. Let me just have a little drop of water. Of course, if you want to wallow in the complete Village Green Preservation Society experience, do pick up the 2004 reissue, which comes on 3 discs and has more extras than a Cecil B. DeMille movie. Whoa, my references now come from the 1950s. You know, hey, that's how contemporary I am. I mean, you won't get this finger on the pulse stuff from any of those other younger YouTubers out there. Oh no, you know, I've got all the latest hip trends. Oh yeah. And while this isn't the greatest concept album of all time because it lacks a narrative, I like concept albums that have a narrative, you know, a story, you know, that's the whole point. You can hear how its influences spread out through the pantheon of rock and roll, and instantly I think of albums by Blur, you know, when listening to this record. It's got the same kind of spirit to them. Now, that's a good thing because I really like Blur, but despite my reservations about it being a concept album, I'm still giving this a very strong 5 Skyscraper Condemnation affiliates out of 5. That's 5 Skyscraper Condemnation affiliates out of 5. And if you haven't had time to check out this album, you know, go and discover it and give it a go. I guarantee it's better than that fucking Zappa crap. Okay. My name's been Darren Locke. I've been talking about the Kinks are the Village Green Preservation Society, and the next concept album up is going to be War of the Worlds, donated by Mike Hardin, who's very, very kind to donate this, and I shall be listening to this in the surroundy soundy on the SACD. And with that, there's only... Now, the dog started to cough. Don't start. You're trying to overshadow me again. And with that, I must bid you adieu and say, are you ready? Are you ready? Before the dog coughs again. Prog on!